as of right now, I am of the mindset that Adventure Time very well might be one of the best things that ever happened. And whenever I've been recommended Adventure Time in the past, I'll have people tell me it's good, it falls off, or it starts off bad, and then the lore comes in and it's good, and I get a whole different hodgepodge of stories. So I am taking the most unbiased possible method to reviewing this series, and that is, I have never seen it before, I know nothing about it, I am starting from the very, very, very beginning, and I am going to make it to the very, very, very end. At the time of recording this video, I just completed Season 1, so I will be going through every single episode, reviewing it and letting you know my thoughts. Yes, it might be gratuitous, however, I am going to make the best goddamn, least biased, awesome review on Adventure Time of all time, and the reason is simple. It is because I loved it. I fell in love with Adventure Time like I have not fallen in love with an animated show in a long, long time. I missed this level of fantasy, this level of absurdism, and this level of just not giving a about anything aside from just telling a balls-to-the-walls, oh my glorb story, and schmauzow, it did such a good job. I am a very cynical, very critical guy, and the fact that I fell in love with this show as much as I did leads me to believe that it is maybe the best thing that ever happened. So subscribe, come join me with this journey, because I've reacted to every single one of these episodes, and now I'm going to give you the unfiltered review after the fact. And join me on this adventure! Time to subscribe. Let's cover every goddamn season of this masterpiece. Episode 1, Slumber Party Panic, I thought did a pretty good job at introducing a world that very, very much is not like anything you've seen before. Not just as a level of fantasy that you're not ready to expect, but the rules, even within said fantasy, seem to make no sense either. It's not like it's following some sort of fantasy structure that it is self-imposing and following that structure, and everything needs to make sense within that structure. It's so fantasy that even the structure that it has is malleable, and different random shenanigans can happen. The episode starts off with accidentally Princess Bubblegum making this crazy device, potion thing, that starts reviving all these creatures as zombies, and they're coming to eat the people of the Candy Kingdom. Finn makes a royal promise not to tell anyone, and once the day is saved, he decides to then tell them because there's no threat anymore, but since he broke a royal promise, the legendary royal promise guardian Snowglow people are gonna send the world into chaos unless he can answer 2 + 2, which he does, and everything's fine. The plot in itself just seems completely absurd, and it absolutely is. But I think it definitely goes to show that the world of Adventure Time doesn't even need to follow its own rules. It is more out there than anything you could expect. It definitely gets across the idea that Finn is this guy that is genuinely trying to do good by everyone, and that there might be a screw or two loose with Princess Bubblegum. Now, admittedly, my first time watching this, I didn't even think that there was anything wrong with Princess Bubblegum. I thought she was just trying to bring the dead back, and oopsie, well, you know, god damn it, I gerfuffled and brought a zombie apocalypse upon us. I thought that was like, you know, whatever, random shiz. I guess Princess Bubblegum is just super smart and intelligent and stuff. And I didn't necessarily notice, even except for now, in retrospect, where I could see there might be a darkness hiding there, perhaps, as I will get to a little later. And I am very excited to see how the show takes these characters moving forward. Episode 2, Trouble in Lumpy Space, starts to introduce other characters to just flesh out the world a little more. Now, Lumpy Princess over here, LSP, not to be confused with LSD, the drugs that I need to take to watch this show and fully understand what's going on. But it starts to introduce different societies into this world of Adventure Time. This crazy, insane world with all these different nations that don't necessarily make any sense at all, like the Candy Kingdom. It's not that the entire story is going to be taking place within this kingdom. There are many princesses. In fact, LSP is the princess of Lumpy Space, which is a thing that's totally real. And when LSP accidentally infects Jake the dog, by the way, Jake grows on me like a tumor, bro. In the beginning, I thought Jake was kind of like cringe, but dude, at the end of the first season, I love Jake. And that is another thing that I just so love about this show. LSP was so annoying, but every time you see LSP, even as a side character in a future episode, you're like, it's the Lumpy Princess, I know her, she's funny. And the world slowly gets fleshed out by all these random little bits of lore that just slowly but surely start to whack into each other. And I'm only talking about season 1 here. So they end up needing to adventure to Lumpy Space to get a cure for the lumpy disease, and you start to realize that once he develops the lumpiness and becomes the asshole of lumpery that all these lumpy people that are infected become, he starts to realize, I don't want to go back. I like my new very lazy lumpy self. And it actually starts to ask slight existential questions. It's, would you rather just be a complete dumbass that's just blissfully happy not knowing about the travesties going on in the world? Or is it good to be the cynical asshole that I personally like about myself? And it really starts to ask you questions about, who do you want to be? Yes, if you open the news, you will be informed, but you will also be sad, because the world sucks! And it's these slightly philosophical questions that start sprouting up in Adventure Time episodes that are just completely absurd, that really got me much more invested in trying to understand nuances or subplots in these individual episodes. Episode 3 is Prisoners of Love, and honestly, this is probably the episode that made me realize, yep, Adventure Time might be one of the best things that ever happened. This is the introduction of Ice King, still best boy, standing here at the end of Season 1. And Ice King is this incredibly powerful, really old wizard guy with very, very sexy knees, and he's going out wanting love so badly that he's kidnapping women, princesses from all these different nations, right? We established in episode 1 and 2, we got princesses of different nations. In fact, LSP is one of the princesses that got captured, and he's going around capturing women because he wants to get married because he's so alone. Now, as the episode goes on, obviously this guy is the bad guy of the episode. He is the antagonist, he is the tyrant, he is this horrible freaking Andrew Tate out here grabbing women, capturing them, enslaving them, imprisoning them to become his bride against their will. Like, this dude's evil. But you start to understand little by little that this dude might definitely have some screws loose, and who doesn't in this entire show. But Ice King's just very lonely. Like, you could start kind of relating to this guy, even though he's kidnapping women, which is definitely something that I do not believe is good. Not trying to virtue signal too hard here with my woke ideology, but kidnapping women is bad. But I relate to him. He just wants someone that loves him, and he doesn't have that. And he's so easily tricked. Anytime someone tries to make believe that maybe there is a future where someone could appreciate him or love him, and of course he falls for it because he wants to believe that that is the future that he is seeing, and it's dark and sad, and I feel for this guy, for this Ice King. And I've never felt this way towards a character that's out there kidnapping women for a living. Like, holy crap, brother. Man's not doing good things, but like, I get him. And I feel like that's something else that this show does so well. Despite the complete absurd scenarios our main characters keep finding themselves in every single episode, and the incredibly random and weird characters that get introduced that do things that by all metrics are not good things, you can sort of see things from their very, very warped perspective in this insane fantasy world. So when I watched this episode, I realized Adventure Time was more than just, haha, funny goofs and gaffs, zombie monsters, and pudgy princesses. And I really felt heart here that I didn't feel before. Episode 4 is Tree Trunks. So this one really sent me tripping because the whole story is about this elephant lady. Really old, very nice elephant that wants to go on an adventure. And you see, the show is called Adventure Time. It's a time for adventures. It's crazy. So Finn and Jake are these adventures that they're always doing quests and shiz to be noble heroes and stuff. You know, typical isekai protagonist vibes. And the Tree Trunks is this cute little old lady elephant, very small little elephant. Oh, I would love to join you on this adventure. And she definitely makes a lot of sus remarks. I never thought I would see a pedophile elephant in my life, but now we did. And she feels all left out and back left in. And the episode basically ends with her finally reaching the ultimate goal, completing the quest, finding the crystal apple. She takes a bite of the crystal apple and dies. And then you zoom into the crystal apple and you just see Tree Trunks the elephant just smiling and walking around trapped in the apple for eternity. It ends with this somber sound, with just zooming into Finn's horrified expression as Tree Trunks is gone. When I saw this episode, I sat down and I was like, what the did I just watch? Is Adventure Time not just like cute and wholesome? Like, it actually made me sit there and ponder. Yeah, I didn't like Tree Trunks, but I did not expect Tree Trunks to meet or end this way. It definitely threw me for a loop, and I was definitely surprised to see and feel the void of the ending of episode 4. Suddenly there is so much more in Adventure Time than just goofy characters, and oh, I could relate to this guy that's kidnapping women. There's a level of despair and a level of danger that exists in this world that we haven't really brushed by before. And it just makes all the future interactions with NPCs much more interesting, because these NPCs might die. These NPCs, if not getting saved by Finn, well, they might not get saved. Episode 5 is another quest. It's a quest for the Enchiridion, Princess Bubblegum instructs Finn to go get the Enchiridion. Only a true warrior can get it. And Finn and Jake go. They go across the land to find the Enchiridion. And they go through all these crazy quests with these giant ogres and these old lady eating bug monsters, because obviously that's a thing. And eventually they get to the end. They find the Enchiridion. After all sorts of crazy riddles and challenges and shiz in pure Adventure Time goofy fashion, they find it, and everyone in my chat just kept telling me that, oh, it's lore, you'll learn about that later, the Enchiridion is super important for later, but it hasn't really been referenced or brought up at all this season. The reason why this episode stood out to me wasn't just the fun, wacky hijinks and adventures that I love so much in Adventure Time. For me personally, the reason why I was really just interested by this episode is because it really seemed like Princess Bubblegum was manipulating the shit out of Finn to get the Enchiridion. Princess Bubblegum makes believe she falls at a tower, so Finn saves her. So she's like, oh my god, you're such a legendary warrior. And he's like, yes, I am. I could do any adventures. Oh, really? You could do adventures? Could you even get the Enchiridion? And then he gets the Enchiridion, and the Minotaur guy that was guarding it says, listen, don't show it to other people. Implying maybe Princess Bubblegum. This is when it started planting the seed in my head that this Princess Bubblegum character might not be the goody two-shoes wholesome princess trying to do the right thing all the time that we think she is. And there are a couple more slip-ups. I say slip-ups, not like the show slipped up, but like little slip-ups in Princess Bubblegum's facade that makes you realize maybe she is just a manipulative bitch. I don't know. And that's kind of interesting as far as a character development standpoint, aside from the wacky shenanigans that actually transpired in this very episode. Next episode, episode 6, The Jiggler, is probably the weakest episode in the entire first season of Adventure Time. Not gonna lie, it wasn't bad by any means. They find this little used condom-looking creature in the floor, and they bring him up to their house to have so much fun, and the Jiggler's jiggling. They're all vibing, they're jiggling, and suddenly the Jiggler starts dying because you took the Jiggler away from its natural habitat and away from its mother, and the ecosystem is dying, and they end up managing to find a way to return it, and it's just basic Adventure Time shenanigans. I just didn't feel like there was that deeper layer in this episode that a lot of the other episodes seem to have. So while, yes, it does flesh out the world, that even in this crazy, absurd fantasy world, there is some sort of ecosystem that does need to be preserved, and humankind can destroy that for their own fun, you know, just like the real world. But I felt like they did a much better job of this specific example in episode 21, Donny, so we will be covering that a little more there. I thought this was the worst episode in the season. Not to say it was bad, it was just kind of a 7 out of 10. Just didn't really do it for me much more than the very generic laughs and giggles that the episodes tend to give me. Episode 7, ReCardio the Heart Guy, introduces us to a very interesting character in Adventure Time, and I do not know if he comes back. ReCardio, the Ice King's heart, that escaped the Ice King and took form of this riztastic character that's just risen up the whammon everywhere, because, you know, Ice King, in his heart, he wants women. So the heart's really good at risen, but the Ice King is kind of cringe. So the poor Ice King is sitting there in the trash. So alone, my heart has left me and has escaped. And meanwhile, ReCardio's out there risen up Princess Bubblegum, and Finn's getting all jealous, and you got this cute whole love triangle situation going on. And it turns out Finn keeps accusing him falsely out of jealousy, and this is one of those times that the show loves just completely subverting my expectations. This is the first time I noticed this trend, and they do it a lot. It's when Finn, just because he's petty and jealous, starts accusing ReCardio the Heart Guy of doing all these terribly wrong things, and he has no evidence, and he's purely just doing it out of jealousy and pettiness, and he ends up completely right, and he's justified for all of his pettiness. It's just such a glorious twist on the, I shouldn't have been jealous. No, man was totally right all along, and they keep doing this in Adventure Time, this subversion of expectation trope that honestly, it kills me every single time. Of course, he ends up right. ReCardio the Heart Guy is trying to freaking capture Princess Bubblegum because he's just the evilest part of the Ice King. And, of course, the episode concludes with a happy ending. Heart goes back to Ice King. Princess Bubblegum not captured. Ah, very wholesome. But for me, it was another look at the Ice King from a different perspective. Seeing how lonely he truly is. His own heart ran away from him. And the unlikely alliance between Ice King and Finn to get the heart back also is very much reminding me of like my favorite Tom and Jerry episodes where Tom and Jerry ended up needing to team up against some other guy. Those were always the best, even though they were always head to head. And it kind of goes to pave the path for a future where Ice King and Finn are working together in different scenarios, where ReCardio might be coming back at some point. There is this part to Ice King that we are unaware of. Ice King is this incredibly powerful wizard and we don't know a lot about him. This episode, quite frankly, just did a really bang-up time introducing all the characters in this different setting and introducing this plot subversion tactic that it loves doing and I love seeing. Episode 8, Business Time, was really, really funny. I loved this episode, I think, more than the average person loved this episode. So the episode starts off with little ice cubes floating ashore, little tiny icebergs. And, you know, they open up the icebergs and, hey, you find random stuff in these icebergs, like children's shoes, or eventually, businessmen. Businessmen whose whole lives are revolving purely around working, around needing to obey a higher power. So this episode takes a really closer look at, like, basically capitalism gone too far, where businessmen just want to do business things and they have no life aside from business, where the CEOs of the companies can sit there all plump-like and let their business people take care of the riffraff on the bottom. Where eventually the CEOs become pointless and the business people are going to want to take over the company because the CEO is not working hard enough and he's always going to get backstabbed. This whole episode was like a season straight out of Succession in a show, but what for me stood out as probably the scariest concept is how ruthlessly efficient the business people were. Every single thing that the business people did, they did for the sake of efficiency, while at the same time it was all just a completely twisted and horrible thing. Like, for example, they're little fluffball people and they would suck up all the fluffball people in like a Team Rocket level robot because everyone keeps attacking the fluffball people, but no one will attack them if we keep them safe, stored in our dungeon for eternity. Which, yeah, definitely does solve the problem of, you know, people torturing the fluffball people. However, you just strip them of their freedom. And you have a lot of these interesting moral dilemmas, not that they're really dilemmas, in this episode with the business people aiming for efficiency, you know, pure capitalistic, zero integrity, money-making, goal-accomplishing savagery. But at the end of the day, that does be the thing that they need to do so often. And finally, the coolest part of the episode, the lore implications. What are these little icebergs floating ashore? Little iceberg floats ashore with children's shoes, with frozen businessmen from another time who knows how long they were encased in ice. This is when the idea kind of gets planted in my head, at least, that who knows, this Adventure Time full of random swamps made out of garbage and Korean-speaking unicorns, who knows? Is this a post-apocalyptic world? Is this like a hellscape? Is this a drug trip trying to escape from the really dark reality that we inhabit? Because the lore until now has just kind of been everywhere, but things are tied together to some degree. There has to be some level of thought that went into this that makes it make sense that there's an iceberg of children's shoes floating ashore. Episode 9, my two favorite people, is the episode where Jake the dog is dating Lady Rainicorn and is best friends with Finn. Now, the issue is, he doesn't know how to delegate his time. He wants to spend his time with Lady Rainicorn, but he's missing all the adventures with Finn. He wants to have adventures with Finn, but then he's not having sex! Yeah, that's right, I said it. So he decides he's gonna have all of them get together, everyone's gonna be friends. And you know the biggest issue with introducing your waifu to your homie? Netorare, baby. It's NTR time. It's cuck-a-clock, it's Sneeko reference time. And Finn and Lady Rainicorn just become a little too friendly for poor old Jake. Now, the thing I like the most about this episode is that we're finally getting, like, a Jake perspective episode. And as I mentioned, in the beginning, Jake as, like, a +1 character, he's just kind of goofy and random and funny. But once you start to see things from his perspective and you start to see how he acts in given situations, start to fucking love this man. I love Jake. So it's in the last episode of the season, they're like, oh, Jake, you're cute. And he's like, I'm not cute. I'm hot. Like, he says the most random, outrageous stuff all the time. And in the beginning, it's like eye-rolling. But when you start to see that personality of his just take root, oh, it's just so glorious every time. And the fact that the animators put a butt on him whenever they can is just impressive, honestly. Episode 10, Memories of Boom Boom Mountain, is awesome. We start to learn the backstory of Finn, why Finn is always so altruistic and outwardly helping people. Because as a child, he was in the forest, he was alone, he was crying, and he pooped himself on a leaf, and he got the poop stuck to himself, and as a baby, he couldn't clean his poop. So Jake's parents adopted Finn. So Jake's parents adopted Finn, cleaned his poop, and made him feel safe. And from that moment forward, Finn would never want to leave anyone crying and alone again. And no matter what, if they needed help, he will solve their issues. It's like a cute backstory. It introduces you exactly how Jake's family got close to Finn, why Finn and Jake are so close. It does a good job for lore purposes, but also it's a really funny episode about you have all these guys brawling, right? These Viking adventure guys, they're all brawling, and you have a mountain in the distance that mountains can't move, and it's forced to look at them beating each other up. And this mountain, this mountain is, it's a libtard mountain. It's crying because, big men beating the f***ing out of each other hurts the mountain's soul. So the mountain's crying and saying, please, please make them stop. So he tries to make them stop, which obviously is not what they want. And the mountain is crying because the mountain doesn't want to see them fight. So they say, why don't we turn around the mountain? Well, that's bad because the mountain behind that mountain likes staring at the first mountain's back, not the first mountain's front. So then the back mountain starts crying. So if they can't do that, then they have to find a different way to solve the problem. And every time they try to solve one problem to placate one person who's being, quite frankly, annoyingly nosy and should just mind their own business, and instead of doing that, he will go and save the next guy, and that causes a problem for the next guy, and the entire ecosystem gets derailed. Every single thing that he does ends up making someone else complain, and then he feels the need to placate that next person, and finally he finds a way to make everybody happy in a way that will not last. And when Finn leaves 20 minutes later, something will happen and everyone will be upset again, even though he thinks he did the right thing. And the episode ends with him feeling good that he did the right thing, even though it makes it pretty obvious that in a minute, it will all come crumbling down and all your issues will bubble back forth. I love this because it's the really childlike, adventurous, optimistic, I could save the world vibe. And that's what this story of Adventure Time is really harping on for Finn, but also the very realistic, these people will complain, and there is no reason to help them because all you're gonna do is make someone else upset, and you will never make everybody happy. This whole episode is just Twitter in a nutshell. It's the bright-eyed 14-year-old that knows all the reality of the world, that he is gonna go on Twitter and he's gonna set people straight. He's gonna make peace among the nations. And then, you know, us watching it, we're the jaded, emo, older guys that are watching Twitter and being like, yeah, they're crying, they're canceling Nux again, okay. That's cool. At least it was only 3 times this week that they tried to cancel Nux. That's a positive week, I guess. Sure, whatever. You know what? Cry. I'm not gonna apologize. You want to cancel? Go for it, bro. I don't even care. I loved this episode so much. Again, this is one of those episodes that I think I liked more than most people liked. I just thought it was super good. Episode 11, Finn the Wizard, I thought was a pretty good episode. It was an episode where Finn meets this random dude wandering around, and the random dude tells him, asks him if he wants to learn magic, so he goes and he learns all these crazy magic spells, but it turns out the reason why he's being taught all of these crazy magic spells is because he is going to be trapped in this fortress for eternity, using all of the magic power that he's learned to hold back a meteor from wiping out his city. So he's being a hero here for the rest of his life. I love this because this is like one of those free internet courses that they're going to teach you everything in the world, when really in actuality, they're only willing to teach you all this purely their own benefit. Never take a freebie. Anything free is probably a scam unless it's my content. Enjoy my content for free, but also send me all of your money on Patreon. That would be fantastic. Patreon.com/NuxTaku. Go do that. Absolutely. Support your boy, because why the hell not? I was worried I was getting a little too wholesome there, and that goes against my brand, so I had to counteract it with being like cringe, and definitely subscribe for more cringe. But it's just this whole idea of never taking what anyone tells you for granted, never trusting people that are going to offer you all this amazing stuff for free. They obviously have an ulterior motive. And also, all these other people that took this course that got stuck there for eternity, just holding up the meteor, all those guys weren't willing to think outside the box and realize, wait a second, maybe there is something I can do that can destroy the meteor instead of just hold it back for eternity and live a life that people told me is the life that I needed to live. It's the kid whose parents told him that you need to go to freaking college and you need to get a degree and you need to go to medical school and that's the only way you'll survive. And they're on that path even though it's not something they want to do, because it is what is enforced upon them. It is what they have to do, and they don't have another choice in the matter because otherwise they'll die. And that's not really true. If you open your eyes and you embrace your passions and you find your own way, you can accomplish and you can do amazing things. And I really like that moral of this episode, all in all. I thought this was a really solid episode. Episode 12, Evicted, introduces us to best girl so far in Adventure Time, Marceline the Vampire. Turns out the home that Jake and Finn were living in all this time, this was actually owned by Marceline. the epic landlord bitch who comes back and tells them, you have been living in my house, now get the frick out of here. And as they go, try to find a new home, evicted, homeless, on the run, the evil landlord has sent them away. They finally found a cave. They finally found a nice place to relocate. In this cave, they throw a homecoming party. Marceline shows up to the homecoming party and says, yeah, this cave is mine too. Marceline is a 2,000-year-old vampire or whatever the hell, and she freaking owns everything. Which is just hilarious because in this world where there's obviously no rules against monopolies, you could have some rich guy who came from a rich family from 500 years ago that just bought up all the real estate and then they own the world, okay? But aside from that, Marceline is just such an interesting character to be introduced to. Someone that saw so much and someone that's so wonderfully annoying. As someone that is petty, all right? I am a petty dude. As someone as petty as I am, I appreciate the pettiness that she exudes so much. She is such an exciting character, and I am so looking forward to seeing her in the future. This episode was hard carried by the banger songs that show up in the episode that I couldn't actually play on YouTube because I got copyrighted, and Marceline just being freaking awesome. Like, god damn! If I would have watched Adventure Time when I was a kid, I would have the strongest goth fetish in the world. Episode 13, The City of Thieves, was all in all a pretty solid episode. Before going into the city, Finn is told by an old lady that anyone that enters that city becomes a thief. Now, just off the bat, this is hilarious, right? They're not warning you that you'll get robbed if you go to the City of Thieves. They're warning you that you will become a thief if you go to the City of Thieves. This is such a twist on like a classic trope of a dangerous city. This city is dangerous because it will corrode your morals. And everything in this city, all the crazy shenanigans and robberies that go on in the city are purely there to entice Finn into just giving in and taking what he wants. He's eventually tricked into actually robbing somebody. Like, he doesn't think he's robbing somebody, but he actually accidentally is robbing somebody, and that makes him a quote-unquote thief. So the old lady's prediction was actually true. And now that he became a bad guy, he freaking goes out there. He's like, you know what? I'm a bad guy? Fine. And he robs all the things from everyone in the city to give back to their original owners and stuff. Caving into the dark side. Man goes from Anakin Skywalker to Darth Vader in a split second in this episode. And finally, at the end of the episode, manages to wash himself clean of sin, because ultimately, whether you're a sinner or you're not a sinner, it is all in your head. If you view yourself as an altruistic and wholesome fellow trying to do the right thing morally, well then, honestly, who cares what everyone else says? I mean, unless you're doing horrible things and you're gonna end up in jail, which obviously I wouldn't advise. For legal reasons, this is just commentary, not advice. But being virtuous or being honorable is purely a mindset. It is not an objective thing that society places upon you. Your virtue is purely based on how you view yourself. And that's such a powerful lesson for a kid's show. I was so impressed. Episode 14, The Witch's Garden, is another one of those episodes that likes to subvert your expectations with the moral of the episode. In the very beginning, Finn and Jake find this garden growing donuts, and they're like, oh crap, it's a donut tree. Jake eats a donut, and well, it was actually owned by the witch. The witch then curses Jake to lose his power to grow and shrink at will, which until now I didn't even think it was a power. I thought that was just kind of a species. I'm telling you, this show is so absurd. You never know what is interesting, what is strange by the standards of the land of Ooh, as it's called. Which, again, such good writing. Such good writing to make a fantasy world so fantastic that you can't tell what is supernatural within the fantasy world. So freaking good. But anyway, he's going around rolling in mud, every mud puddle that he could think of, because he remembered rolling in a mud puddle and before he got his powers to try to get his powers back, and he can't, and he just becomes a sad, lonely dude. It's only when Finn is in danger that Jake is going to make his mind up. He's going to go back to the witch's garden, he's going to apologize to the witch, and he's going to get his powers back, and he does all these things. He grovels, he begs, he does everything to humiliate himself because he stole the donut, and the witch finally gives him his powers back. And then he trips the witch and breaks her cane, spits on her face, and leaves. Saves Finn. Like, what was the lesson here? Don't steal? Well, obviously not. Man had no remorse. He just brown-nosed so hard for the sake of getting something, and then just didn't need her anymore and immediately blasted her. Whether it was the moral thing or the right thing to do is completely irrelevant. It was the Jake thing to do. And it was awesome. Episode 15, What is Life, introduces the character NEPTR, who, judging by the enthusiasm in my chat, probably comes back at some point. Jake is being all trolly and pranks Finn, so Finn develops a robot called NEPTR, the never-ending pie-throwing robot. A robot that will endlessly throw pies to prank Jake. What an epic plan. But the robot has some issues that it's not, doesn't have enough power, so he breaks into Ice King's castle to try and steal a lightning bolt. Of course, Ice King, best boy. Every episode this man is in is instantly gonna make me chuckle and laugh and awesome, and dude is so freaking cool. Andrew Tate wants to be Ice King so badly. So he steals a magic lightning bolt from Ice King, manages to zap NEPTR with it, and now NEPTR is somehow half Ice King and half Finn's creation. Part of him wants to prank, and part of him wants to kidnap women. It's this whole existential episode of what is NEPTR? Who are you? Do you follow the vision that your creator had when he created you? Or do you follow the vision of what is giving you power and strength right now? This existential crisis, this what is life episode is about the robot deciding, does he like pranks or princesses? In like this wild nature versus nurture debate. And I thought it was so spot on for what an Adventure Time take on that debate needed to be. Episode 16 is the Ocean of Fear. So Finn is this fearless adventurer, as we know. And one thing Finn is afraid of, ironically, is the ocean. Many hilarious meme faces of Finn being terrified at the ocean later. Finn wants to eventually overcome his fear. And Finn has, this evil spirit coming out of his belly button telling him, I am the embodiment of your fear. Your fear will never, ever be defeated. All that cool random cringe. And you think it's in his head until Jake at the very end of the episode says, hey, dude. What's that black shadow fear thing coming out of your belly button? And you're like, wait, this is a physical thing? This isn't just in his head the whole time? Of course, just adding to the stupendous spectacularness of the episode. But overall, this episode, even without the random, stupid, hilarious fantasy aspects of it that obviously none of us saw coming, was really, really good. It's an overcome your fear episode where your best bro Jake is willing to take some hits because every time Finn gets scared of the ocean, he ends up beating the crap out of Jake for some reason. And eventually, when they're underwater in a submarine and he's trying to learn about his fear, he ends up beating up Jake when he gets too scared, and Jake loses consciousness and sinks into the abyss. So he has to overcome his fears to really get Jake, and he does it by knocking himself out, which might be a cop-out, but ultimately it wasn't a cop-out, because he just used something as a defense mechanism against his fear to accomplish that goal. He knocks himself out. He sinks into the sea, he goes really deep while he's knocked out, and then he wakes up with the bottom, at the very bottom, next to Jake, and he wakes up, and he's all scared, and he saves Jake, and it's super wholesome. Like, yeah, obviously it was a coward's method to accomplish his goal, but overcoming fear is bravery, no matter how you do it, and I love that moral and that lesson. But one thing that really stood out about this episode, much like the businessman episode, when they're in that submarine under the water and they're looking around, there are these houses. There's an entire underwater city submerged in who knows how many years of coral and bacteria just growing all over the place. There are bodies of men, women, children, and their dogs sitting there watching television, but there's no television on the house that's been destroyed, cars upside down, and it really makes you think once again that this might be some crazy post-apocalyptic environment going on. And I love these really subtle, very subtle details that really get you to think about what made the land of Ooh so wild. It's just a perfectly normal civilization, except it's been submerged for who knows how many years until now. And it's those lingering mysteries as to the lore of the world that also just keeps drawing you back in, aside from the wacky characters and interesting philosophy of it all. The next episode, episode 17, When Wedding Bells Thaw, is probably the worst of the Ice King episodes in this season. Now, all the Ice King episodes are the best episodes of the season, aside from Marceline. So, when I say that it's the worst of the Ice King episodes, it's still a great episode. It's just not the best of the Ice King. You got what I'm saying. Anyway, Ice King meets this very lovely old princess lady that he's gonna marry, and he goes to his only two friends in the world, Finn and Jake, to throw him a bachelor party, because ultimately no one else knows him. Yes, he knows Finn and Jake mostly by Finn and Jake beating the crap out of him to save princesses that he's kidnapping, but ultimately that's what friendship really is all about. Am I right, guys? I'm not keeping you all here against your will mostly, but you're here, right? I knew it. We are best friends. which again is cute and definitely points a nod to how lonely poor Ice King actually is, that these two people that are constantly assaulting him are actually the people that he regards as the closest people to him in the world. And then you realize that eventually this whole wedding is actually just a shenanigan of the Ice King, because he's mind controlling this princess into marrying him, and they save the princess and defeat the Ice King and move on to better days. All in all, it's a really funny episode. It definitely nods into the themes of Ice King very much better. I think that you need episodes like this just to keep rounding out Ice King's character, and for you to understand every time you feel bad for how lonely this poor guy is, you're understanding that this man is using this loneliness to justify him kidnapping women, which is, again, not kosher. But all in all, this was probably the weakest of the Ice King episodes. Episode 18, Dungeon, is an episode where my girl, Princess Bubblegum, who, by the way, might be completely insane, drops off Finn and Jake to put signs around a dungeon explaining how, do not enter this dungeon, it's extremely dangerous. Also, Finn is trying to prove to Jake that he can actually do things himself and doesn't need Jake to accomplish those things. So Finn decides, I'm going to enter this dungeon that I'm in the middle of telling people not to enter. I'm going to go in myself. And he does. And you meet some of the most hilarious random dungeon creatures ever. As far as heroes venturing through dungeons as like a fantasy trope, I love how Adventure Time does it. It twists all of them. He's up against this panther creature, who's scared of dogs, by the way. It loves reminding you that, yep, if Jake was here, this would be no problem. That this panther creature with an incredible power. The ability of knowing the approximate details of all things. Which is, of course, hilarious and just one random bullshit power that any dungeon creator would create. And it's full of these random things. Oh, you must defeat me in a race, and I must be defeated in a random this shenanigans contest. And it turns out constantly Finn is getting beaten and battered, and he realizes he does actually need Jake. They are a really good team, and he eventually meets Jake. And Jake also couldn't accomplish anything without Finn, and you recognize that really they need each other, and it's really wholesome. And things are looking good and looking cute, but things get a little too crazy, and Princess Bubblegum flies in with a laser beam monster creature, saves all of them, and they leave. And all in all, I thought this episode definitely does a great job with the Finn versus Jake relationship. I think it really does a great job to show you how they each definitely improve and enhance upon the flaws of each other, which is what friendship really needs to be about. It definitely goes to show that Princess Bubblegum is wild, and we don't exactly know what's going on in her head. She is one psycho, but most of all, I am so impressed by the imaginative dungeon that they created for Finn and Jake to go through. This dungeon was hilarious. It was not the focal point of the actual episode, because the focal point was mostly the more psychological aspect of I'm doing this alone versus I'm doing this with a friend. I can accomplish things without needing a crutch. But just the incredibly imaginative environment of the dungeon adds so much to this episode and makes it stand out as maybe one of the best slice of life episodes that aren't lore heavy in this entire season. But if you thought this episode shows you that Princess Bubblegum is up to some weird shenanigans, well, the next episode, episode 19, The Duke, well, that definitely does an even better job. The episode starts with Finn and Jake throwing random potion bottles around, and they're all exploding and having random effects on things. And when he throws a boomerang-shaped potion bottle, it boomerangs into Princess Bubblegum's room, it explodes, and it turns her green and ugly and stuff. So when they go up to say, oh, Princess Bubblegum, I want to take accountability, they hear Princess Bubblegum making the very random speech of, whoever did this is dead to me, I will never forgive them, they will be executed, I hate them so much. And instead of taking accountability, Finn is obviously scared. And she blames the Duke of Nuts. She sends Finn, a royal adventurer, on a quest to find the Duke of Nuts, to bring him to her so she can execute him because she thinks it's him, because she doesn't like him. So Finn, too ashamed to say that it was him himself, he goes on this whole quest. He finds the Duke of Nuts, and it turns out the Duke of Nuts is such a super nice dude. He's so nice and wholesome. Everything about him is way too good. He is too perfect. So many D's Nuts jokes later, the Duke of Nuts finally acknowledges why Princess Bubblegum doesn't like him. Because he has a disease that forces him to eat all of the pudding that he sees. Which, I mean, sure, it's Adventure Time, whatever. Whatever. But you realize that Princess Bubblegum is really going to execute this innocent man because she didn't like that he eats all the pudding. They do find a way to clear his name. Finn ends up needing to admit to his faults. Princess Bubblegum honestly doesn't even care that it was Finn. She just kind of wanted an excuse to kill the Duke of Nuts, which is wild. And Finn takes her place at this princess meeting because she can't go because she's all green and ugly. All in all, this episode was good. It was not one of the best of the season, but it definitely is good for character development, as far as Princess Bubblegum especially, but also for Finn, and shows you exactly how much Finn cares that she likes him. Man's a teenage boy. What do you expect? Episode 20, Freak City, is one of the best episodes of this season, I think. It's the introduction of Magic Man. And Magic Man is awesome. When they meet this random hobo in the woods, the hobo says, "Hi, can you please give me some food?" And Finn's thinking to himself, "Oh God, man, I don't want to give him food. I don't have a lot of food. I only have these sugar cubes, and I love these sugar cubes." And he's like, you know what? Maybe it's some sort of quest that if I give the hobo some sugar cubes, he'll reward me with something awesome. So he ends up giving up the sugar cubes. And it turns out Magic Man was the hobo. He turns into Magic Man, this really wholesome looking fellow, and it turns out he is not wholesome and transforms Finn into a giant foot where Finn cannot really move, and when they go anywhere, everyone's scared of him, and Finn ends up needing to take refuge under some sort of bridge with a bunch of other freaks that met the Magic Man along the way. You got this person who was turned into an arm, a person who was just turned into a butt, two people that were turned into testicles, and Finn the foot, and they have to live as freaks, shunned by every society because they're different, which is obviously a great sociological message too. But all these freaks eventually join forces, they find Magic Man, and they battle, where Magic Man is willing to transform them back if they could figure out why he did it. Why did he transform Finn into a foot? And as they're trying to fight, Finn realizes, wait a second, I didn't give him the sugar cubes myself. I only did it because I wanted something in return. And Finn says to Magic Man, is that the reason why? Is that why you have done this? Because I am not a true hero? And Magic Man says, no, that's not why. I did it for a very, very important lesson. I did it to teach you that some people are just assholes. When that revelation hit me, I lost my... Magic Man might be the most evil creature in the history of time, and I love him so much. It is just a level of pettiness that I strive to achieve every single day. It is a creature that can only exist without question in a world like Adventure Time, where he decides to leave to turn more heroes that are just too stupid to think that some people aren't assholes into foot monsters. He does not pay for his crimes. He is just left to torture more people because of how petty and f***ing evil he is, and I love him. Episode 21 is Donny. It's the episode I talked about a little bit earlier in the Jiggler episode, where there's a lot of sociological impacts and, you know, basic biological ecosystems that exist the way they do because they've been around like this for so many years. In this specific one, I'm gonna spoil the whole episode for you. There is this city of house people that is always terrorized by Donny the ogre because Donny is super obnoxious. Super obnoxious people give off obnoxygen. It's this thing in the air that keeps werewolves away. Excuse me, not werewolves, Y-wolves. The Y-wolves are kept at bay by the obnoxygen. Now, obviously, Finn didn't know that, and when he saw this ogre terrorizing these houses, he ends up trying to take Donny and rehabilitate him and turn him into a nice, upstanding dude. And if that happens, little did Finn know, the Y-wolves are gonna come in and murder all the house people. So he is basically accidentally committing genocide by taking one tiny piece of the puzzle and throwing it out of whack. And in order to find a solution here, to keep the house people safe, to keep the Y-wolves away, is to turn Donny back into an asshole with no friends that no one could love and appreciate. And for the greater good, he ruins Donny's life, but it's the thing he had to do to keep the ecosystem healthy and alive. It's like such a weird and tragic turn to it, but I actually really liked it. It reminds me of where they used to hunt coyotes and stuff, and they ended up hunting coyotes, and it got to the point that there were way less coyotes. So the deer population started really growing, and if the deer population starts growing, then deer ticks become way more common. And with way more deer ticks, a lot more people got killed because of Lyme disease. So the literal coyotes in the forest were keeping people alive because of Lyme disease. But of course no one knew that, and it's this weird system, this weird Pandora's box, where you take one little thing, one seemingly innocuous little thing, and you throw it out of balance, and everything crumbles around you in ways that you can't even expect. So the solution would be, yes, you kill a lot of deer, which seems so wrong, but killing these deer lowers the population so there's less Lyme disease. Or you reintroduce predators into the ecosystem to kill deer, so less deer are there, less Lyme disease. Yes, it seems in a vacuum like you're doing something horrible. However, ultimately, you are doing this to preserve the balance of the world around you. It's like such a sad and adult theme for this episode, but I was really, really impressed by it. Episode 2 is the Dommy Mommy episode. It's Henchman. It's where Finn decides he wants to relieve Marceline's henchman of his service by taking his place as Marceline's henchman. So Marceline will keep going on these adventures and tell her henchman Finn, who's, he's a hero, he's an upstanding dude, and he's gonna do whatever she tells him because he agreed to be her henchman. So he'll go around, that'll do all of these things. Like, hold down the poor person as Marceline is about to suck his color out of his bow tie. Okay, that wasn't so bad. As Marceline is about to go smash people at the Kingdom of Nuts. And when she meant that, she just meant kind of just play a lot of cool tunes, smashing tunes, and revive the dead to be part of the band for a party. And he tells Finn to kill this cute little thing, and Finn's like, why would I kill this cute little thing? And then the cute little thing turns into this monster that's about to kill people. But she wanted him to kill him while it was cute. But it turns out Marceline doesn't actually do bad things. You thought Marceline was kind of an asshole in the last episode, but now you're starting to realize Marceline really isn't. She just likes with people. And it's so perfect. Marceline is an ideal character. Easily best girl. Maybe the best character. She's up there with Ice King, without a doubt. I freaking love every episode that she's in. And I can't believe she was only in 2 episodes, but she made such an impact. Henchman might be my favorite episode of this entire season, just purely because of how fantastic Marceline is constantly. And I just love that Finn actually learns about that and saves Marceline at the end of the episode because, well, Marceline can't Finn anymore because Finn knows that she's a nice person. And Finn knows she's a nice person, so they kind of get along. It's the weirdest friendship, and it's just so... It's kind of like my friendship with all of you. I abuse you and make fun of you guys, that all you guys are probably terrible cringe porn addicts, and here I am, getting admiration. Yeah, admire me, you porn addict. I've never seen porn before in my life, I'll have you know, so, like, I'm not like you. I've never seen porn. Me and Matt Pat, 2 of us, ain't never seen porn. Episode 23, Rainy Day Daydream, is an episode that, to be honest, for, like, the first 2/3 of the episode, I didn't really like. It starts raining knives outside. Freaking Land of Ooh thinks it's England. Raining knives. Like, holy crap, that is spot on. And instead of actually needing to do anything about that, Jake says, let's just use our imagination, like the floor is lava. And then the floor actually becomes lava. And Finn thinks this whole imagination pretend thing is cringe and bull. But Jake is really having a good time with his imagination. And in order to turn off his imagination, to turn the floor into lava and summons all these crazy invisible monsters to destroy Finn in real life, there's this imagination turner-offer thingy. So they end up going on this whole quest to get to the imagination turner-offer. They turn off the imagination, and Jake loses all of his personality. Until this point of the episode, I will admit, I thought this was probably gonna be my least favorite episode of the season. Just the random and the imagination is real cringe. I was like, dude, this ain't for me. This is obviously for kids playing pretend all the time. And like me, I pretend I'm cool. And I'm not cool. I'm just some random idiot yelling at a computer. But pretending the floor is lava, please. This Adventure Time episode was clearly just purely meant for children. And then it completely blasts me in the last third of the episode when they say that now that he has no imagination, being all cringe and annoying, he's a shell of his former self. He's just out there living a very sad, dark life, a life without any imagination at all. And Finn has to be babyish and enter his imagination to try and save Jake's. And it's really beautiful because you can live your own life doing the same things every day in 2 ways. An optimistic, imaginative way where everything in the world is not what it seems. You are the center of your universe, doing all sorts of amazing things in your mind, and it's such a much more colorful world than it is. Or you could focus on the dreary reality of it all that just brings you back into Earth and prevents you from spreading your wings and flying. It's a really powerful episode on how to live your life, the perfect balance between reality and imagination that I think everyone truly needs. It's why I love fiction so much, especially animation, and quite frankly, it's an experience I'm getting with Adventure Time that I feel like I haven't had in a long time. I am feeling almost nostalgic for a show that I've never seen before. This concept at the very end of Rainy Day Daydream is one of the most powerful concepts in the entire season, and it's why this episode has become, like, easily one of my favorite of the episodes of the season, despite the relatively lackluster start of the episode. Episode 24, What Have You Done, is when Finn and Jake, on orders of Princess Bubblegum, capture the Ice King and imprison him. And they don't know why. The Ice King keeps saying, I have done no recent crimes. Well, recent because he sex traffics women, okay? Let's be real here. But they've already dealt with him, they've punished him for that. So he has done no recent crime, why are you capturing me? And their trust Princess Bubblegum. Their trust in Princess Bubblegum is much more powerful than them believing in this crazy sex trafficking Ice King. And they imprison him, and they start to question themselves. He's done no crime that we know of. Princess Bubblegum won't tell us what crime he committed. Why did we imprison him? And this whole episode is just realizing, wait a second, why are we trusting Princess Bubblegum's word to torment a recently innocent man? This episode's hilarious. This might be one of the funniest episodes in the season. The whole dynamic of Ice King being imprisoned and all of his magic being stored in his crown so he can't actually access it because they knocked his crown off. It's really, really funny. Like, this whole dynamic, absolutely hilarious. Him taking the mirror to try and show Jake and Finn that you are the bad guys, but every time he tries to say it, the mirror starts shattering. It's just such a hilarious gag. The show's very funny. I'm talking about the deeper themes of it all, but the show is just so constantly funny. And eventually, Finn and Jake release Ice King to only realize that the reason why Ice King was captured is because he needs to scream in pain. And a scream in pain is what he needs to do to cure the people from a disease that he accidentally caused. Now, he did not do any crimes on purpose. He did accidentally cause a disease, and the scream in pain is the only cure for this disease. So, that's why Princess Bubblegum wanted to capture him. Quite frankly, he is a pretty innocent man in this case. Princess Bubblegum really is tormenting someone for the sake of other people, and it's not necessarily on his conscience to fix the thing that technically he did cause, but he didn't cause on purpose. Anyway, the way they actually get him to scream is Finn goes and says that we are friends. I let you go because we're friends. We are true homies. He finally admits this fact, and Ice King is so overjoyed. And then Finn fakes dead, and Ice King is traumatized and screams. He bellows at the top of his lungs, and that cures the people. Which is a nice gag, but it also goes to show that the manipulative tendencies that Finn is actually starting to develop. This isn't the same Finn that we saw at the very beginning of this very same season. Early Finn would not have done this. Would have probably beaten the crap out of Ice King. But he's actually learning and growing throughout this series, all so gradually, and I love that. He becomes manipulative in this sense. He is willing to play on the loneliness that Ice King, poor dude, feels, and uses that to his advantage to get a scream of pain out of him. A scream that he made because he thought he lost his only friend. This episode was so good. It's the whole concept of torturing an innocent person to save 100 other innocent people, whether that's moral or not, which is an incredibly complex emotional issue. And the fact that Finn and Jake ended up realizing maybe we are bad guys, just trusting Princess Bubblegum's word for it and imprisoning and torturing an innocent recently man, that's rough, buddy. I thought this episode was really, really good. A good establishment of everyone's characters, good development of everyone's characters, and just overall great themes and hilarious. Episode 25, in my opinion, should have been the last episode of the season. I don't know why episode 25 and 26 weren't switched, but whatever. Episode 25, Finn and Jake meet the legendary hero, Billy, named after me, because of my Billy meme in chat. Yeah, and you don't remember. That was like 3 years ago. You don't remember that meme. Comment Billy in the chat if you do remember that meme. You don't remember that meme. You don't remember that meme. But anyway, they meet the hero Billy, and the hero Billy feels a void inside him. Anytime you beat any evil guy, another evil guy will just take his place. It's irrelevant. You save someone from an ogre, and then a dragon will eat them the next day. Being a hero is worthless. Men fell into a nihilistic void. A level of futility that is honestly so true to some degree, but not something that can negate actually doing heroic things. This episode is all about Finn trying to embrace that ideology because, well, Billy is so badass, I'm going to embrace that ideology of not being, doing violent things. And he ends up trying to do not violent things and try to save people in not violent ways, and it ends up causing so much more damage than through violence, because violence is awesome. Violence is poggers is the lesson here. Just the violence needs to be used correctly. And he ends up teaching this lesson to Billy and reignites the fire within Billy to continue doing heroic things. This episode was fantastic. I don't know if Billy's coming back in the future. I'm sure he is. Man seemed way too cool to not be reintroduced. But just between us, this episode rocked as a season ending, right? The whole concept of the next generation reigniting the flame of the previous generation, while the previous generation inspired the next generation, is just such a beautiful back and forth that we see so much, even in the real world. The concept of a power vacuum constantly being filled by the next threat is something so real and can make you feel so powerless as to the good you're doing, but it doesn't negate the fact that you are nonetheless doing good. And it also says that yes, sometimes violence is the goddamn answer. It's such a good episode. I think this might be one of my favorite episodes, probably top 3 episodes of the entire season. And it just makes me so much more excited to meet this guy next time and see how Finn, our little growing hero dude, actually affected a legend. And then there's episode 26. I still think that episode 25 and 26 should have been flipped. I think that Billy the Hero episode would have been a so much more dramatic finale than the Gut Grinder. Not to say the Gut Grinder was bad, but it was more of an average episode, whereas I felt like Billy episode was just so peak. Now, the Gut Grinder is the biggest switch up of any episode so far. You remember how I mentioned how the show really loves to toy with you and curve your expectations? Well, this one definitely does that. They go from village to village where everyone's being, robbed. All their gold is being stolen by the Gut Grinder. First, they meet the soft people, and then they meet the spiky people, and then they meet the poo guys. Oh, it's me, the poo guys. All right, that's why I didn't write this show. I have never been high enough to write an episode of this show, that's for sure. But anyway, the Gut Grinder looks surprisingly like Jake. You see, every single person that they're going to, they all see Jake, and they're all terrified because the Gut Grinder looks a lot like Jake. Something suspicious is going on. Jake starts to wonder, am I actually the Gut Grinder in my subconscious time going to annihilate people? And they eventually find that there is this actual Gut Grinder creature that looks a lot like Jake and is tormenting everybody. And eventually, the real Jake is hypnotized into becoming the Gut Grinder by the way you pet his belly, whatever. I'm sure this might come up at some point again, I don't know. And he becomes the real Gut Grinder, and he beats up the fake Gut Grinder. And it's like, okay, all right, well, what the fuck? What is the lesson here? Like, I don't even know what's going on anymore. Eventually, they through playing terrible notes on Jake's viola, Jake decides to calm down. And don't worry, because Finn is always going to be there. You don't have to worry about yourself. Your friends will keep you on the right path, etc. It's very wholesome and beautiful. And then the way the episode ends makes you really wonder, who was the Gut Grinder? Was it the fake one? Was it the real Jake? And they eventually go to the fake Gut Grinder, and it's not another Jake species. It's the wife of the mayor of the spiky people who felt like she should have more money to go shopping more. Women just be shopping, guys. I have no idea who came up with possibly the greatest plot twist in the history of mankind. All of the emotional throws of this episode ended up meaning absolutely nada. It meant zero, zilch, zip, kaput. Because the entire bad guy that was out here robbing gold from all the villages was just the wife of the mayor that wanted more money to do more shopping, because women now, women, it's just women, am I right? Gonna smoke some more. Oh, god damn, that feels good. And one more hit. Women, am I right, guys? This was a massive subversion of expectations, and I absolutely loved it. Now, again, I still think the Billy episode was superior, and it should have been the season finale, but this episode was actually fire. The whole moral dilemma of maybe I am the bad guy, but you still have your friends around you to keep you on the right path, that's all beautiful. The episode was hilarious. Everyone pets Jake, and Jake stops being all macho and he becomes all cute. The episode was funny. Again, this is not a comedy analysis per se, but the way the whole episode just wraps up as like a women be shopping plot twist that came completely out of nowhere is everything I love about Adventure Time, and really just solidifies to me, once again, that Adventure Time might be the best thing ever. I adored season 1, and I am so excited to get back on the rails watching season 2 with all of you. Definitely follow me on Twitch and subscribe to Nuxanor, where I'm doing every reaction. Every second day, another Adventure Time episode is coming out. I'm gonna watch the whole goddamn show if you guys keep leaving likes on the videos and stuff. So I wanted to take this moment to thank all of you for all your support, and I wanted to tell you to stay exceedingly weird, fam. Thank you for being here on this adventure. Time to leave a like and subscribe. Ah, see what I did there? You see what I did there?